welcome everyone to Weathering the Storm. Delighted to have two people here today from Swansea. We've got John Franklin, the Local Area Coordination Manager, and Claire McCarthy-Reed, who's one of the senior local area coordinators in the Swansea team. Lovely to have you both with us today. Swansea definitely always been one of my favourite places to visit. It's lovely. And
it is. It's sun's out, looking at the sea. Couldn't be better.
And we're the most friendliest people on the planet, of course.
Couldn't be more. Always worth the 7-hour 4 train connection journey from Newcastle, I find. If not just for the copious amounts of Welsh cakes that you bestow upon me.
Yeah, exactly.
And warm, welcoming people. And my favourite fact, the fact that your Tesco's bags have the Welsh dragon on. And in fact, I've got one.
You've stolen one. You're not allowed to take them out of the country. You know that, don't you?
Yeah. Really interested to hear your observations really over the last few weeks. What have you found during this time? How local area coordination has kind of had to adapt and what you've seen in terms of the community responses really?
I think it's one of the biggest things for me has been the way that the team has managed to turn around and respond to the crisis, putting in huge hours and organising and putting things in place. And and I think that when I was reflecting about this earlier, I think that the thing that really strikes me is just the quality of the staff that we've got in the team, and I think that reflects in the way in our recruitment and in the way local area coordination recruits, and the kind of values and principles that we instill right at the very beginning, because we get through that recruitment process some incredibly skilled and passionate people. So that's been a real impact for me. And as you know, we've been boosted with a lot of temporary staff who've been redeployed and relocated to us from other areas in other departments in the council, and they've been great too, because they've been dropped into roles that they had no idea about. Had a lot of good support from Claire and Ronan, but have had to start from scratch, making connections in places that they don't know and in a role they don't really know. So they've been amazing as well. So that's really struck me.
And what have you seen, Claire? What have been your kind of observations from the way the team have responded?
Yeah, again, amazingly, they've just been so flexible and passionate and have gone the extra mile, I guess, to not just to make sure that we're able to respond to people's needs in the crisis, but to still hold local area coordination principles and values close. So they've still been really working hard to connect people in the right ways and to make sure that it isn't reliant on them on an ongoing basis, but actually they're cutting themselves out to the loop so that people are connected to each other. So it's not about them at all. And they've really held that principle tight, I guess, through this process of this is all about how we can strengthen communities even in a crisis. So they have been incredible.
Yeah, and that's really important, because I think although we've had to change in dealing with the crisis, there is still local area coordination going on, and we've just started some small group discussions to talk about the future and what we should stop doing, and what we should, what we started that we should stop, and what we started that we should carry on, and what's it going to look like. But one of those questions was, local area coordination is still happening. What does that look like in your area? And although there is a lot of response to crisis going on, there is still local area coordination happening, and the guys are the team are doing that amazingly well. Taking time with people, which is what it's about, isn't it? Taking time, listening, connecting, building relationships. And that's what we're all about, and that's been happening in the middle of the crisis as well, which has meant that a lot of them have been spending a lot more time and energy on people than you would expect if you just thought they were dealing with people in a crisis. It's not just a service response of someone needs something, here's the answer. Our team have been working in that local area coordination way.
The way the community have responded and the things that we're observing there are surprising, yet not surprising. I guess the volume of people's care for their neighbours and willingness to share what they have with others is fantastic. Yet we kind of knew that anyway, but I think this has been an opportunity to shine a light on the strengths we already knew the community has. But I think with all of that other stuff stripped away, we've really been able to see the amazing strengths of community supporting one another, coming together, having each other's backs, and that sense of just being in it together,
where we've seen coordinators where they've been working for a while, and 5 of our team only started in January, so they've done amazingly well, because they've only had a few months to start making those connections before lockdown started. all those connections have been massively important, because they've already had those connections. They're able to get going, and more people have signed up as a result. But that foundation, those relationships with key people, has been there, and they've been able to build on that. And that's I think is partly how we were able to respond so quickly and get things running so quickly. It wasn't a case of sitting down and planning for 2 weeks to work out what we were going to do. It was just a case of getting on and using the connections and the people that we knew already, and gathering some of them and talking about what was happening, and trying and organising it, and spending hours and hours on Teams and video calls, facilitating and coordinating things, and having those existing connections has been, like I say, really important.
I think just the fact that, like, obviously existing members of the team were known, so it just that there was that level of trust there, that people knew that they were the coordinators were the go-to person. So whether somebody was in need in week 1 or week 10, or whether it was a neighbour saying, look, I've got time and I really would like to help, then people knew the coordinators and they were already linked to them, they were already aware of them, there was already that trusting relationship that didn't have to come out of nowhere. The relationships in community already existed, I guess, with the coordinators.
Yeah. And Jon, you mentioned earlier about starting to have conversations with everyone about what they want to take forward into the future. What's been coming out of those conversations so far, and what you're hearing from communities as well, and individuals within communities?
Yeah, early days, but from what I've heard so far, again, it's just continuing those connections. I think we've had conversations around, our coordinators have constant conversations with people saying, in the crisis, you've been helping, Mrs. Jones with a prescriptions or a shopping or, whatever it might be. How would you feel about when the crisis is over? How would you feel about helping her get to a sewing group or the friendship group down the road? And people have been responding really positively to that. Mm-hmm. So those sort of things are going to continue and carry on, and where there's areas where we've put in place temporary local area coordinators, the response has been, we don't want these people to go.
Right.
So I read a comment today actually from a Facebook comment from in one area from a lady saying, when this is over, I'm going to kidnap you and keep you as the local area coordinator for this area because we don't want you to leave. Wow. And just recognising how vital that is, and that's just in the last, that's someone's been there 8-9 weeks, and already the people are seeing the real benefit. So I think there's, that we're having a question around dependency and how we work with that, what that looks like. People who are isolating and needing food and needing people doing things for them, and how that sometimes that's going to need to carry on, and how we can somehow move that to a more doing alongside, and having that conversation. That's going to look different for everybody.
What do you think, Claire? What are you hearing in terms of what you want to take into the future, on what people are excited about?
Yeah, I think just the fact that communities are more connected now. Mm-hmm. So often we'd hear people say things like, "Oh, communities are not like they used to be, are they? People don't know each other over the garden fence," and and they arc back to like this golden age somehow. And I just think that actually that statement, and it just doesn't hold value anymore to say that communities aren't as they used to be. And actually they aren't, but for a very good reason. I think we are seeing communities that are now far more connected than maybe they were 2-3 months ago. So I think for us as coordinators, it's about looking at how we can support people to maintain those relationships, maintain those connections, maintain those networks that have naturally developed out of crisis, but actually they can exist in normal times too, and they're really important in normal times. And I think knowing that once Betty has met Mary 3 doors down, she can't unknow her. So we're never going to go back to how things were. And I think that's a really good thing.
It's mirrored right across the network that there's this desire from communities to keep this new form of social capital going, that people don't just want to go back to the old ways. They want to carry on these new relationships of trust and support with their neighbours and play more of a role within their communities. Whereas perhaps previously people hadn't even seen that they were part of a community or didn't recognise that they were part of a community.
Absolutely. And I spoke to one lady over the phone a few weeks ago who said that she's one of the community champions, and I'd helped to connect her up with a neighbour, the other end of her street. And she had lived on her street for 15 years and her neighbour had lived on the street for 20 years. They'd never met, they'd never spoken. And now she's helping her with picking up prescriptions, we're doing her shopping for her weekly, they have regular telephone calls, and they really can't wait to develop their friendship further, I guess, to be able to engage in friendship physically in a normal way that we would, to go out for coffee together, to go out for meals together, to go to each other's homes together. That actually they lived on the same street for 15 and 20 years and they've never met, and now they have a real friendship that will last.
I think that the issue of trust is massively important, and I think on several levels. And I think people have learned to trust each other in communities. And I think I've lost count of the number of texts and comments I've seen of people saying, "Oh, I've met someone down the road I never met before, and now we're becoming friends, and I really enjoy their company." It's happening loads, and so that trust is building in our streets and in our neighbourhoods. But also there needs to be an organisational and a central trust in the community. You know, from the council and from our organisations. Now, we've seen that we can trust people to look after each other and to do things for each other, and it's worked really well. And in order to move forward with that, we need to continue to extend that trust. I guess my concern is going to be that we retract that and try and take some kind of centralised organisational power back, and then try and run the community in the way that that we've been doing for a long time before. And I just think that there's so much more opportunity now for us to be trusting our communities and trusting the people in our communities and giving them the power and the say, because they know their communities and they know each other and they know what's best.
Similar to Jon, I just think like we're hearing over and over again in way about community resilience and community strength coming out through this crisis. And I think they need to be given credit for that, not just in the short term, but in the long term, and that they're capable, that they have solutions to offer, that there are skills to be shared. Welsh Government and local government, I think, have actually done an incredible job at offering support to individuals and families and local communities during the pandemic. But actually, if it wasn't for local communities taking local action and local support among themselves, then we'd be in a very different place now. And actually, local organisations, local government would never have had the resources or the capacity to deal with a crisis without communities.
I agree entirely with that. I'll just add that it's the community and our citizens have responded massively well to it. But it's been the local area coordinators who have been able to facilitate that, organise it, bring it together, and where we've got local area coordination, I think those things have been hugely beneficial. And we had a comment from a lady who works in a partner organisation and works across the whole of Wales, or whole of South Wales, and her comment was that she'd seen the response in several different counties, and just thought that ours was just more powerful and efficient, and thought that was down to the fact that we got local area coordination in Swansea.
I think it did need that, a little bit of coordination to help make those initial connections.
And actually it does.
And I think that's where local area coordination comes into its own, isn't it? That it's all about coordination. It's like that Ronseal advert, isn't it? That we do what we say on the tin.
I'm really interested in hearing from you both. You've talked a lot about your teams and how they've had to adjust and the hours they've put in. I'm sure you two have not been immune from that, unless you're terrible leaders and you've just allowed everyone to get on with it and do it.
I've been clocking off lunchtime every day.
But yeah, I'm just really interested to hear how you personally have kept going through this time. What's been keeping you going through this storm that we're weathering?
I think for me, ultimately, it's about that this is the right thing to do. Actually, local area coordination holds communities and families and individuals in a right place, that they are valued, that we acknowledge their strengths and what they can contribute. That it's not about seeing communities or families or individuals as problems to be solved, but rather that we can walk alongside them, even if it is a little bit virtually and over the telephone these days, but that we are able to recognise people for their worth. And I think even in the middle of crisis, it feels like the right approach. It feels like the right value to hold tight. So yeah, those values of local area coordination for me, the principles of our normal day-to-day job, those things have been the things that have got me up in the morning and have helped me to respond in the day-to-day crisis, I guess.
I can't believe you stole my line.
I was going to say, and lots of chocolate biscuits, but I thought they'd better not do that.
Yeah. Significant amounts of chocolate has been consumed, definitely. Yeah. But I've got written down. I've got knowing that we're doing the right thing, and I think that's that keeps me going, when things are difficult. And I think I've been on the other. I feel like I've been on the other side. I've been on the service delivery side in other careers in my life, and trying to do things to people and being involved in setting up things, from an organisational point of view, and just landing it on communities and on people. I still remember the first time that I did training as a local area coordinator, and Ralph stood in front of us and talked about all these values and principles and how much it impacted me. And so that's a driver for me, is that we know that we're doing the right thing, and being part of the network and having colleagues around the country who agree with that is really valuable and important. And that keeps us going and keeps me going.
I think Swansea is such an incredible local area coordination programme, and clearly the relationships you have and the investments you've made over the years have been paying dividends during this time. So thanks very much for coming on and sharing that. It's been really encouraging to hear all that, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed for you all that as you move into the next phase of whatever this looks like, that you can take a lot of that good stuff as you describe into the future. And
definitely, and I think it's a fantastic opportunity. So part of it really excites me. I don't want us to miss that boat. So I think the future's bright.
And you both got your sponsorship deals in there from Ron Seal and Orange there for you.
Yeah.
Your sponsors
we had payment up front. It was really important.
I was hoping you weren't going to notice that.
Oh, listen. Hey, great. Look, it's been lovely chatting with you, and thanks very much for coming on. And
cheers, Nick.
Fabulous.
Bye now.
Bye, Nick.
Bye. Ta-da.
I'll do.